this comes up. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Just as well I've done that. Can you hear me now? Can you understand me though? No, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? Yeah. So I will also try and speak slowly, but I do warn you I can't speak English because I'm from Scotland, so it might have a bother. Look, thanks very much to Stefan, Florian, all the guys from Stogger, Peter. I think they've done tremendously well for our first event. I've known this company now for about a year, and this epitomises what the company's like. They're very young, very forceful, really push hard. They tend to do a great job of everything. I'm sure that extends to their lights as well. So thanks very much for them for having us, and thanks for you coming along as well. Okay, so the title of the talk is Autonomy and Electrification in Managed Turf. So I'm not up here today to give you a big sales pitch on our product. The reason I chose this subject is partly because I'm a substitute stand-in for somebody else, John Ledridge, and I don't know very much about Manchester City, so that's going to be difficult for me. But in a previous occupation, I was a sports turf consultant, and I still have a lot of clients who I'm friendly with. In the last couple of years, I kept getting asked questions about electrification. Could I recommend certain products, obviously, because that's our business. And just latterly, I'm getting more and more questions on autonomy. And everywhere you look in social media now, it seems to be autonomy that's everywhere. So I thought this was quite prevalent. It does centre quite a bit on golf, but this talk wasn't actually written for this audience, but I still think there's a decent amount of relevance. So for those of you that don't know me, just to give you a little bit of context as why it's me that's up here speaking, I started off life as a lowly greenkeeper in Scotland back in the late 80s at Dumbarton Golf Club. I gave that up and went into full-time education. I studied sports turf management. The 90s, early I worked under the tutelage of a guy called Bill Lyon, that ran with Surrey Golf Club in London. And then in 1982 I took over Aberdeen Golf Club as a course manager. I was only 22 years old. And during that tenure I was fortunate enough to win the Greenkeeper of the Year award. It was 1998-99. And soon after that I was approached by Robert Trent Jones to act as consultant for their business building golf courses. And I spent a lot of time out in Scandinavia. Scandinavia is important from the sense that they get a semi-permafrost from October to March, and you just can't play golf, and it's quite difficult to manage courses and build courses, and I found a lot of time in my hands. Me being me, I decided to set up another business running concurrent with that in 2005, which was Advanced Turf Technology. And you probably know us best for the yellow and black machines, which are the Infinicuts. So you see the Infinicuts at most of the Premier League grounds, lots of grounds in Europe, places like Real Madrid, Manchester United, that sort of thing. And then that takes us to today. ATT was sold in 2017. I sold it to MTD. Cut a long story short, I acquired it back 2020, and it's subsequently been purchased again by Stanley Black & Decker. That's why that logo's at the bottom. But through the whole tenure, we've always kept the name ATT in the company name, and I still run it. So, what we're going to look at today is the key influences driving the move away from the traditional methods, which are obviously engine-based equipment. What are the benefits and limitations? And at the end of it, we'll go a short review, basically what the landscape's going to look like, maybe because of this. So we'll start going through what's the motivation. So there's 5 basically key areas about why we're looking at electrification and autonomy. So the first one is labour. That's quite obvious. Second is cost. Cost influences everything, obviously, regardless of what you do. Environmental. I noticed the COP29 summit today. So environmental is quite a big factor, certainly moving across to electrification and autonomy. Whether you think that's correct or not at the point of source and lithium mining, at the end of the day it's here. Welfare has always been important. We've got a duty and a care to look after our staff, people who are working on golf courses, sports fields. And lastly, performance. So, chosen correctly, this new equipment that's electrical, that's autonomous, there's good opportunity to actually improve things both agronomically and from a management standpoint of view. So labour. So interestingly I've put here, labour typically accounts for between 50 and 60% of most of the costs here running a golf course. Interestingly, however, when I'm going around at the moment, I would say probably 8 out of 10 people, 9 times out of 10 people maybe, are struggling for labour. It doesn't seem to be the cost that's driving certainly the foray into autonomy. It seems to be the lack of getting people. And part of that is because of this, the generation that we have now. When I was younger and I started greenkeeping, used to work lots of hours, you took all the overtime you could get, and you started work at 5 AM. It's highly unusual now. The younger generation value their time more. They don't want to get up early, they may not want to work 5 days a week. I've got a colleague in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, a guy called John Shaw, and John used to get stressed. I speak to him a couple of times a year, and he couldn't get staff. Staff would start on a Monday, and then they'd lose them on a Tuesday. They don't want to get up early in the morning. And I spoke to him a couple of years ago, and he says, how's life? I said, well, life's fantastic. He says, it's great, it's working well. He says, how do you manage that? He says, we decided to embrace it. So he's a nucleus of staff, he's about half a dozen people. And what he does is he gets young people in, and he allows them to start at 10 AM. They can work 3 or 4 days a week if they want, and he works with them. So he works well. If we fight against it, we're not going to be able to do that. But this is part of the reason that's driving us particularly to autonomy, trying to get staff into this industry. And part of the reason for that is we've really not been very good at selling ourselves. The governing bodies haven't done a great job. I think this industry is fantastic, it's technical, it's interesting, gives you chances to travel, but we don't push it. Our industry's not pushed it particularly well. Also, it's changing now because there's a scarcity of people, but traditionally it's not been paid very well either, which really doesn't entice people in, and it also doesn't entice parents to want their children to come into the profession. So that's, necessities of mother of invention. That's the other thing. It's driving us away from hiring people and getting into autonomy. And ultimately, it's culminated in a general shortage in the workforce. So nature abhors a void, as I say, and that's why we're getting pushed into autonomy. Cost. I'll not spend too much on this, but cost is always going up, obviously. So inflation, we had Ukraine, various different things. Fuel prices are going up, labour costs are increasing, but also equipment's going up as well. Speaking to somebody just a couple of days ago, they got a quote, I think it was for a John Deere fairway mower, 7-inch, with a set of groomers or tender conditions, they cost it, and a set of brushes on it was over £100,000. It's €120,000 just for a fairway mower. And then you've got to put someone on it, so it's maybe another £40,000. Then you've got to fuel it, and you've got to maintain it. So when you see companies like Husqvarna coming into the market, and they give you an option, they say you can buy a couple of Cegeka machines at £30,000 each. They'll cut at night, or cut any time of the day you want. Don't have to put anybody on it, fuel costs are low. It's no surprise that clubs are starting to look at this sort of thing. They give you an indication there as well on salaries. That's me, I started as a YTS, which is a youth training scheme in the UK in 1998, and I earned £28.50 a week. For the same job today in 2024, in the UK it's £256, and that's just increased. So that's massively more than the inflationary rate from then. It's huge. So there's a lot more costs associated with looking after fine turf, basically. It's getting harder and harder to make it work. And again, this is what's driving us into this new age, I think. Environment, as I talked about, really we've had a bad rap with the environment, particularly again in golf, but it's moving into sports turf with things like light rigs, although it's nice to see companies like Brain Talent doing lots of things that are good. But basically, it used to be we'd get battered on social media, and get battered on TV, excessive water usage, chemical usage, habitat loss, all these sort of things. Certainly, you've got your own personal thing for the environment. Want to go down electrification, that's up to the individual. But there's no getting away from the fact it's good for the clubs as well. If you can purport yourself as being good for the environment, carbon neutrality, your waste saving. It used to be a few years ago, we would tentatively approach a club when we sold our mowers into them, and we'd say, we'll give you extra discount if you allow us to get some pictures at the club, and put it on social media, put it on magazines and the like. Just the last couple of years, it's starting to turn. Believe it or not, we're getting contacted by the clubs, and the clubs are asking us, do you mind if we put your mower, on some of their events, some of the social media outlets, because they're trying to push themselves as being environmentally friendly. So it's good for the business as well if you can get down that route of electrification and autonomy. And it's dynamic. We're in at Wimbledon, so we're the main supplier for Wimbledon tennis, and they must use umpteen of our pictures each year. And speaking to their marketing department, it's like, what else can they do? At least somebody's with it. You can see it. It's moving. So that's another factor in going down the electric and autonomy route. Welfare. Well, we're all very familiar with noise, vibration. These are things that when you go down the electrification path, there's no reason why you can't improve that. We've all got a duty of care. We all have to look after our staff. I remember myself sitting on fairway moors. It's 8 degrees outside, and you come off and you can hardly move. And you try to come off it, you're stiff, you're cold. Again, to go back to what I was saying about trying to entice people into the business, into our industry, it's not a good look. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to ask somebody to do that. So again, it's another reason why we're going down the autonomy route. The last thing is performance. I go on social media and I see lots of different, there's lots of negative comments about autonomy, for instance, and they're going to take jobs and various bits and pieces. But we need to start looking at the benefits of electrification autonomy. So energy efficiency compared to petrol diesel, 20 to 30% is in petrol and diesel compared to 85 to 90%. And ultimately that's where we get the environmental benefits, the energy benefits. Torque acceleration, you might ask, well, what's the point of that? Well, none of us want to work really hard to produce these pitches, these golf courses are pristine. We don't want tyre marks on it. There's no reason that you can't program torque and acceleration parameters into this equipment. If you look also as well at the Crest products, you look at Husqvarna, one of the things I'm seeing is they love these products out there because they can mow in wet conditions. It's a massive advantage, particularly where I come from, which is the west of Scotland. Lower maintenance, there's no doubt about it, you get fewer moving parts, so they should get a lot less maintenance as well. And integration of smart features. So I retrained as a mechanical engineer in 2005 through 2008. And I can tell you it's a lot easier to design electrical hardware than it is mechanical. If you're trying to move direction of items, so in this industry we make things go that way, we make things go that way, or we make things go that way. But to change direction mechanically is pretty cumbersome, it's difficult. It's very simple to do electrically. You're doing it with relays, switches, potentiometers, so it gives you far more scope to make things work. So performance, I think, is something that we'll see being designed into these products more and more to benefit us agronomically and to benefit players. So to summarise, we've definitely got labour shortages, no doubt about it. Poor pay has not helped. Price of fuel, labour, clubs are looking at ways to save money. Good environmental stewardship, it goes without saying, want to do that. It definitely improves welfare for employees. We don't want people, gas engines, vibration. We're a litigious society as well now, of course. We sell it to councils, and almost before you sell it, the councils want to know what the decibel reading is and they want to know what the HAV reading is, because they're worried about litigation 20 years from now, vibration, white finger and the like. So that's also driving it. And then, like I just talked about, performance, it should be able to outperform anything you've got. Okay, so we'll summarise just some of the benefits and limitations. However, to look forward, sometimes you've got to look back. So the current status quo, although it's changing at the moment, is it's still pretty much primarily internal combustion engines. That's what ICE stands for, if people don't know. Pretty much over the last 20, 30 years, product hasn't changed that much that's driven either with petrol or driven with diesel. Now you see a John Deere more, a John Deere 220 or something, so you go from a 228 to a 220B because they've changed the switch. They make things maybe a little bit quieter, maybe a little bit better fuel efficiency, but ultimately it stayed the same for a long time. I think we're at a shift. I think the industry's going to change. I stress this is my personal opinion. But it's been dominated by traditionally Toro, Jacobsen and John Deere. Less so Jacobsen just now. And there's an element of the tail wagging the dog, if you understand that phrase. So they've dictated the market. And I think it's quite interesting there's new people coming into the market with fresh ideas. You've got people like, I was saying, Husqvarna, you've got Crest, you've got Firefly, Stogger, coming in. And I think it's good. I think it's good to disrupt. And I think we can all benefit from it. Added to that, demand for conditions never goes down. It only ever gets harder and harder. And I like to that, if it's harder and harder, then people tend to have less resource to do it with. So can this new way actually help us with that as well? And then, as we said, we've got a dwindling availability of workers in the sector. We've really, frankly, screwed ourselves up with that. So what might it look like? So I think there's going to be a large conversion to electrification, particularly in the smaller products, certainly up to kind of fairly rough mower size. We're going to find new businesses coming into the market. There's no doubt about that. So we'll find new smaller businesses. Are absolutely new to the market. But what's interesting this time is we've got companies like Husqvarna, which is a $4 or $5 billion revenue business coming in. You've got Crest, owned by Positech. That's a $16, $17 billion business. These businesses are actually bigger than Toro, and they're bigger than Jacobsen. They're similar size to Deere. That puts a slightly different dynamic on it. Because in this industry for years, new players that come into it have done the same. You end up selling out. These businesses are not going to sell out. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of longevity of these businesses in the market. And it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, because they're learning their way at the moment as well. And not wishing to belabour a point, but the labour force, the young guys, they've definitely got a different ideology from what I had. Possibly some younger guys in here. The vast majority of people really don't want to get into this industry. So it is going to be different. We're going to have to do it differently. So the benefits and limitations summary. We've been through a lot of the benefits, labour. I think if we sell ourselves correctly, electrification, autonomy. For the first time, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I seen on LinkedIn, there was a guy, and his title was Director of Agronomy and Autonomy. First time I've seen that. I don't know whether it was self-appointed. But Director of Agronomy and Autonomy sounds better than groundsman or greenkeepers. And this goes back to how we better sell ourselves. These guys are embracing it and they're moving on with it. And that's better for people coming into the market because they see it, that sounds a lot better. Maintenance costs, like I said, environmental. I believe it can be agronomically better, if it's done correctly. And it should improve player experience. One example of that is cutting at night. You don't need mowers on the golf course or anything like that, through the day. However, we've got to be honest with ourselves. There are limitations and everything, obviously. You can't have a higher initial purchase price. Anybody out there seen the Firefly autonomous mower? It's knocking on $180,000 to $200,000. You need a couple of them. It's expensive purchase price. Obviously, you've got to do your return on your investment. We do still see people saying it's a threat to jobs. Less and less so. As I say, most people speak to golf courses. One of our friends down at Woburn, he said to me, "Johnny, get me an autonomous mower tomorrow with your cut units on it, so I'll buy 3. So I'll buy 3 there and then." They just can't get staff. It's not that they don't have the money, it's just they don't have staff. Moving to electrification and autonomy, so specialised maintenance. You're going to have to learn how to deal with batteries, you're going to have to learn how to deal with electrical circuits, and if it's autonomy, you're going to have to get certainly a base understanding of RTK, GPS. You've got base stations, you've got roamers, and how to deal with it. None of it's particularly difficult, but we're going to have to try and embrace it, and all service techs are going to have to get into it as well. We're going to have to deal possibly with new companies. If you've got a lot of brand loyalty and you've been dealing with Toro or John Deere or Jacobson or whoever, and you've been doing that for the last 20 years, don't be blinded by it. Try it a bit new. Have a look at new stuff, have a look at some of the new companies, see what they can do. I'm familiar with Toro, I'm friendly with the guys at Toro, John Deere, Jake, and they're looking at the moment. But I believe there's a lot of new stuff going to come out, and I think it's quite exciting for us. The choices can be difficult, particularly with new things coming through. So at the moment, your Husqvarna, again, and Cressy using examples, they're kind of enlarged domestic products. You also have, I think we're going to find more cutting wheels coming into the market too, from an autonomous perspective. I know Stogger, are looking at that. There was one launched at the Saltex show just a couple of weeks ago. So you're going to end up having choice pretty soon too. We may have to manage differently. So it's all very well saying that mowers can cut in the evening. A golf course not too far from me is right next to a housing estate. If you're going to put a £30,000 couple of Cioras on there and try and do it, I'm not quite sure how long it'll last. So you might have to look at it from that point of view, just to look after the investment. Grass collection, I'm asked that quite a lot as well. There's definitely a limitation on grass collection just now. Someone will sort it, I'm absolutely certain. It'll get fixed, but at the moment, there is no good solution for grass collection and autonomy. That is particularly difficult, a difficult situation for sports turf, but I think it will come. And then duty cycle. Duty cycle really isn't a problem as long as you choose the correct equipment. So never choose it on the edge. So always give yourself a 25 to 30% buffer based on conditions, that type of thing. So some considerations. So duty cycle we just talked about. If you're going to purchase anything electric, have a think about the battery chemistry as well. So our industry, my opinion is you'd want to go lithium iron phosphate. Lithium iron phosphate, it's got the best charge-discharge cycle, so up to 4,000 charge-discharge cycles. So that means that the battery will retain most of its capacity up to 4,000 charge and discharge cycles. Compare that to lithium ion, you're looking at high hundreds. If you work it out, even if you charge it 365 days a year, you're well within your 5 to 7 year budget for replacing the equipment. And also it works best at low temperature and high temperature. And you've only got to follow the car industry. The car industry's moving from lithium ion. So they used to use, like Tesla for instance, they were using 18650 lithium ion cells. They've now moved to lithium iron phosphate, and BYD out of China is all lithium iron phosphate as well. Compliance is going to be an issue, particularly for the manufacturers, but ask for the compliance documentation. The reason for that is it will give you comfort and safety in the equipment. These lithium batteries pack a punch, and a lot of energy in them. You have to make sure it's safe. Grass collection we talked about. If you're going to go down the autonomy route, before you even pick up the phone and ask somebody, if you were on a golf course for instance, or you've got a site and you're having to move between different pitches and you get tall buildings and you lose GPS coverage, How do you deal with that? You deal with that with LiDAR or stereoscopic cameras. So you have to ask that type of question as well, or you have to ask somebody that knows about it, so that it doesn't interrupt basically the deployment of the machine. How do these companies incorporate the mechanical element? I put that up there because a few years ago, a company that sold their business to Toro, was TurfLinks, and I got a call from them. They said, we'd like to buy some cutting units for the new robotic mower. I said, yeah, no problem. We gave them a price, come back a couple of years ready, and we're ready to purchase. So we sent them it, and I got a phone call. They said, and I'm not making this up, John, how do we fit them? I says, what do you mean, how do you fit them? I said, well, how do they fit? I says, well, they fit onto your yoke. Well, what's a yoke? What's that? They had no clue. We had to design it for them. The point I'm making is a lot of these companies are high-tech companies that come into autonomy. They don't necessarily have any agronomic background. Very, very clever people, but they downplay cutting grass. I've seen it time and time again. They think that cutting grass, maintaining grass is just basically a very, very basic thing. And of course, there's actually just as much effort goes into the design of all this equipment that we use for maintaining grass as it does for the motive part, the part that makes it actually run. Because it's new, you have to ask, what level of tuition are you going to get? It can be quite complicated. Can they support the product? This industry is, it's a harsh environment for the equipment, so you've got to try and make sure that they're supported properly for you. And I like to that, the availability of it. So I think these are things just to look at. And I wrote a lot of this down basically because you're going to get you'll get a copy of this afterwards, so it's maybe a good thing just to review as you go along. Okay, so a little bit more on the autonomy side. I'll not take too much more of your time. But I've seen again, I think it was on LinkedIn or something like that, somebody put it, and it says they're going to take our jobs, it's what we're doing, it's like George Orwell's 1984, it's a disaster, the skies are going to fall in. This is not new, so the first automated knitting machine, 1589, they had the same fears. And then you've got the spinning mill with Arkwright, 1771. And then you've got relay logics, 1880 to 1920. These are things that basically done people out of jobs. That's why they're up there. And then 64, the Cybernasian Revolution. So Johnson got a memorandum basically saying to him, you need to stop this, it's going to have bad impact on employment, it's going to destroy commerce, that type of thing. You get Tesla looking at the autopilot, 2014, and then last one there, 2018, Suncor. The point I've put them up there is they never stopped a thing. And the reason is because the genie's out of the bottle. We never go back. There's only one thing I know from a technical point of view that ever went back, and that's Concorde. Right? There's a period of time we did it supersonic. Technology only goes one way. Right? And whether we like it or not, it's going to keep pushing along. Here, I think it's AI. I think it's AI that's going to happen to us. And I'll give you one example of AI that will come out. I was speaking to someone, and we've all heard this, to say there's an autonomous mower coming out and it's going to cut somebody's fairways or something. It's through the night. And often what I hear is, oh, what if it hits a stick? Or there's something in the way, something like that. What are you going to do? There's nobody on it, you can't stop. Well, us as a business, to give you an example, we 3D print a lot for prototyping. And if you're familiar with 3D printers, I'm not going into too much detail, but you can leave it running overnight. If something goes wrong, right, and you end up coming into a spaghetti junction of bloody filament everywhere, it's a mess, it does it because the thing's kept running and it's been a disaster. But we just purchased a couple of new 3D printers a couple of months ago, and they've got AI cameras in them. So the AI camera knows basically what that part looks like that it should be printing. So it's looking at it, right, and if it deviates whatsoever, it stops and it messages us. It says, no, that's what you're going to find in autonomous equipment. So there'll be cameras looking in front for obstacles, and there'll be cameras looking at the back to see if there's any marking. And because they're connected with a GSM chip, there's nothing to stop them contacting you and say, look, I think we've got an issue here, or you can program it to lift. It's not going to stop it, basically. So this argument that you need someone on it, it doesn't work. It's not going to happen. It's here and it's here to stay, and they will make it function well. So, just a couple of other slides. How's it all going to play out? So I put this up here. If any of you heard the 80-20 rule, it's the Pareto principle, and this hockey stick here. So the Pareto principle, basically, you're going to get 20% followers. I suggest, probably more than 20% in this room, because you're all come in here because you're interested, right? You're probably, early adopters of new technology. You've come to store the new technology and new lights kind of thing. What normally happens with that, new people come to market. So you've got the Firefly companies and the like, come to market. People look at it, they're not quite sure. That's why I keep getting calls. What should I do? Should I go down this van out? Should I buy this? Is autonomy okay? Is it all going to work? And then you see a growth phase. Basically, you've maybe seen some of your colleagues and it's worked, and you think, oh, it's not such a bad idea. Maybe I'll have a look at that, and it'll come together. We're at that phase at the moment. And on the hockey stick, I don't know if this thing, whatever it is, but this hockey stick phase here, so this is the growth phase. I think we're a bit here. Normally what happens with the hockey stick is in business, it shoots really quick. So you've got all this investment happening, right? Then you get some adoption, and then you get majority acceptance, it starts to move. And I think over the next probably 2 to 3 years even, I think you're going to see it changing massively. And here, I got sent this picture a short while ago. This is a golf course in Norway. This guy's got 28 autonomous mowers, and all he cuts basically are his greens and tees. Right, the whole golf course has been like that. He had a full fleet, I think it was Torno equipment, ditched the whole lot. And that's what he does now. I asked him, why did you do it? It comes as no surprise. Can't get any staff. Couldn't get any staff. He's never looked back. So there'll be a variation of this, right? So could be mowers like this, it could be mowers like Firefly, you could have a mixture of both, wheel mowers. Ultimately, I believe, again, it's my personal opinion, you're entitled to disagree with me, I reckon 80-90% of clubs are going to go like that, and I think the drive for that has always happened historically in sports turf. Once they nail that, once they nail the grass collection, we'll start to see it come into sports turf as well. So a quick summary. I believe we're going to see autonomy become the norm. Those areas where it makes economic sense, you're going to see basically move away from the tradition, and that's basically anybody that it takes a long time. It's repetitive. It's a known area. Places like fairways. It's very hard to see how it's going to go back the way. I can't see it. There'll still be some areas, obviously, we need to cut by hand. Probably electric, but ultimately I don't think there'll be that much. Yeah, certainly golf courses and the like may choose to cut their high value areas, when they want to look at these and tees. I don't think for a second that Genk, in a stadium environment would cut. They may, however, put something on the stadium environment that's autonomous, like there's a UV light rig out there, so it could be UV light rig. There's nothing to stop them removing dew autonomously. So before the dew comes in, doing it autonomously. Don't think they'll cut, but there's nothing to stop that. And at the end of the day, once the genie's out of the bottle, like I said with autonomy, it doesn't take a great leap to go from cutting grass to doing other things. And then legislation. So one of the big factors that stopped Toro, John Deere and Jacobson getting into the autonomous route is they're terrified of somebody being hurt with autonomous mower, somebody being run over. That's why they've been holding back. And I think what we'll find is it's inevitable it's going to happen at some point. One of the downsides is, I would suggest the clubs are going to have to get more specific liability and indemnity insurance for that. I can see that coming just now as well. And that also goes back to the compliance aspect. Because compliance is not just about how the product's actually put together. because it's software driven, you've got to actually get compliance on the software as well, make sure it's right and all the redundancy features on it. And then basically in terms of the market going forward, we will see attrition of some of the smaller players coming into the market. But see, the difference at the moment is some of these new players that are coming into the market, they've got deep pockets, they're well funded, and they're mature businesses. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Toros of the world, the John Deeres of the world, I have nothing against Toro or John Deere, but I can see a different dynamic happening. I can see it all changing. And I'll say again, because we're kind of on the fringes, don't be closed-minded. Have a look at my opinion, see what's out there. You know, don't just go to Toro. Toro are going to come out with, I spoke to one of their guys at the TurfTech show, they're coming out with a couple of products, I think, before Christmas actually. I think they're coming out with a couple of bits and pieces. But I think, yeah, have an open mind. So look, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you appreciate it wasn't too commercial. I'm just trying to give food for thought. I was a substitute in here, so I know it was like golf orientated, but you know, hopefully it was enjoyable, and if you understood me, that's a bonus, isn't it?